Good morning. Thanks for coming in today. I am glad we could find a time that works for both of us. To get us started, why don't you tell me a bit about your background and what brings you here today?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I have been working in administrative support for about a year now. In my previous role, I handled the front desk for a small professional office where I was the first point of contact for every client and vendor who walked through the door. I really enjoyed the fast-paced nature of the work and the challenge of keeping everything organized while managing a constant stream of people and phone calls. I am looking to move into a larger environment where I can apply the skills I have developed and continue to grow as an administrative professional.
That sounds like a great foundation. Since you have been in a front-facing role, you know that the first impression is everything. Let's talk about the basics of visitor management. If someone walks in and they aren't sure where they need to go, what are the basic steps you take to direct them to the correct department?
My first priority is always to make them feel welcome, so I start by greeting them warmly with a smile and asking how I can assist them. I think that initial greeting sets the tone for their entire visit. Once they are settled, I listen carefully to their needs or the specific reason for their visit. I don't want to assume, so I ask clarifying questions if it is not immediately clear who they need to see. After I confirm the correct department or the specific person they are looking for, I provide clear directions. Depending on the office layout and how busy I am, I might walk them there personally to ensure they don't get lost, or I provide very simple, easy-to-follow instructions. Finally, I like to offer to notify the department of their arrival so the employee knows the visitor is waiting. I want to make sure they feel guided and welcomed from the moment they enter until they reach their destination.
I like that you mentioned notifying the department. It shows you're thinking about the internal flow, not just the visitor. Now let's shift to the phones. We get a lot of calls here, and not every caller is easy to deal with. Imagine a visitor calls, but they are speaking very quickly, perhaps they're nervous or just in a rush, and they are very hard to understand. How do you manage that call?
That can be a bit stressful, but I've found that the key is to stay calm and professional. I try not to let my own frustration show, because that can make the caller even more anxious. I would politely interrupt them at a natural break to slow them down. I usually say something like, "I want to make sure I understand you correctly so I can help you best. Could you please speak a little slower for me?" By framing it as my desire to be accurate, it doesn't sound like I am criticizing their speaking style. If they are still hard to understand, I ask specific clarifying questions to confirm the most important details, like their name, the date they are referring to, or the specific purpose of their visit. I also make a point of repeating back what I have understood. For example, I'll say, "Just to confirm, you are looking to schedule a meeting for next Tuesday at 10 a.m., is that correct?" This ensures accuracy and makes the caller feel heard and valued.
Repeating the information back is a great habit. It prevents so many errors. Speaking of communication, I want to ask you about a concept we value here: active listening. In your own words, can you explain the difference between active listening and simply waiting for someone to speak?
To me, active listening is an intentional process. It means fully focusing on the speaker, not just hearing the words but really understanding the message and the intent behind it. It involves paying attention to their tone and, if they are in person, their body language. I try to show genuine interest by nodding or using short acknowledgments. Then I respond thoughtfully based on everything they've shared. Simply waiting for someone to speak, on the other hand, is passive. That is when a person is just waiting for their turn to talk. They might be distracted or just preparing their own response in their head while the other person is still talking. They aren't truly engaging. Active listening builds trust and ensures clear communication, whereas passive waiting is where a lot of misunderstandings happen because the listener missed the nuance of what was said.
That is a very clear distinction. How does that translate specifically when you are on the phone? Since you can't see body language, how do you practice active listening with a caller?
When I'm on the phone, I have to rely much more on auditory cues. I listen closely to the caller's tone and emotions to gauge if they are frustrated, confused, or urgent. Since they can't see me nodding, I use verbal cues to show I am engaged. I'll use short acknowledgments like I see, I understand, or that makes sense. This lets the caller know I am still there and paying attention. Then, as I mentioned before, I summarize their concerns before I move toward a solution. I might say, if I have this right, you've tried to access the portal 3 times and you're receiving an error message on the final screen. Is that correct? This confirms I've captured the details accurately and makes the caller feel valued.
Let's move into the technical side of things. This role requires a bit of a multitasker. What basic software skills do you feel are necessary for a front desk admin, and which of those are you comfortable with?
Based on my experience, you really need to be comfortable with the Microsoft Office suite. Word is essential for creating memos, letters, and documents. Excel is huge for spreadsheets, tracking visitor logs, or managing simple data. Outlook is probably the most used tool for emails and keeping the office calendar organized. Beyond that, I'm comfortable with Google Workspace like Docs and Sheets, which is common for real-time collaboration. I also have experience with basic database systems for managing records. I'd say my typing speed is efficient, and I'm very comfortable navigating the internet for research or communicating with vendors. I'm always open to learning new proprietary software as well, as I know every company has its own way of doing things.
That covers the software. What about hardware? Can you name 3 types of office equipment you are proficient in using?
Definitely. First, I'm proficient with multi-line phone systems. I know how to handle multiple incoming calls, put people on hold professionally, and transfer calls to the right extensions without dropping the line. Second, I'm very comfortable with printers. Not just basic printing, but managing queues and replacing toner. Third, I use scanners frequently to convert paper documents into digital files for archiving or emailing. I've spent a lot of time ensuring that scans are clear and filed in the correct digital folders.
You mentioned printers. We've all been there where the printer decides to stop working right when you have a deadline. If a piece of equipment like the printer or a scanner malfunctions, what is your immediate course of action?
My first step is to stay calm and do a quick assessment. I check for the obvious problems first. Is there a paper jam? Is there an error message on the screen? Is it actually plugged in, or is there a loose connection? If it is something I can fix quickly and safely, like clearing a jam or reloading paper, I'll do it right away to minimize downtime. However, if it's a technical failure I can't resolve, I don't spend too much time guessing because I don't want to make the problem worse. I would immediately notify the maintenance or IT team. When I contact them, I provide specific details: the model of the machine, the exact error code if there is one, and the troubleshooting steps I've already attempted. This helps them fix it faster.
Now let's imagine a higher pressure scenario. Suppose a critical piece of equipment like the main phone line or the digital booking system fails just a few minutes before a major meeting. What is your immediate action plan?
In that situation, the most important thing is to not panic, because the front desk is the face of the office. If I panic, the visitors and staff will panic. My immediate action would be to assess the scope. Is it just one line or the whole system? I would immediately notify IT or the technical support team to get the repair process started. Simultaneously, I would inform the key stakeholders like the meeting organizer or senior management so they aren't surprised when the phones aren't working. Then I would activate a backup plan. If the main lines are down, I'd switch to alternative communication, like using mobile phones or a secondary backup system if we have one. If there's no digital system available for bookings, I would switch to a manual system, using a pen and paper to log everyone coming in and out to ensure continuity. I would keep everyone updated with clear, concise communication to manage expectations and minimize the disruption to the meeting.
That's a solid plan. It shows you can think on your feet. Let's talk about the human element of the job. You'll be interacting with a lot of different personalities. What is your personal philosophy regarding customer service excellence?
I base my philosophy on three key principles: empathy, proactive problem solving, and consistency. First, empathy is the foundation. It means truly listening to the person, acknowledging their feelings, and making them feel understood. If a client is stressed, acknowledging that stress builds a bridge of trust. Second, I believe in proactive problem solving. I try to anticipate issues before they become obvious. For example, if I see a visitor looking confused in the lobby, I don't wait for them to ask for help, I approach them first. I want to resolve issues before they escalate. Finally, there's consistency. Every person who walks through that door should receive the same high level of service, whether they are the CEO of a partner company or a delivery driver. When service is consistent, it creates a professional brand for the company and leaves everyone feeling valued.
I appreciate that. To put that philosophy into practice, can you describe a time you had to deal with a highly upset or angry visitor? How did you handle it and what was the outcome?
I had a situation in my last role where a client arrived for an appointment, but due to a scheduling error, the manager they were supposed to see was running 30 minutes late. The client was very angry and started raising their voice in the lobby. My first step was to stay calm and use active listening. I let them explain their frustration without interrupting. I wanted them to feel heard. Once they finished, I acknowledged their feelings by saying, "I completely understand why you're upset. Your time is valuable, and I apologize for this inconvenience." By validating their frustration, I noticed their tone soften slightly. I then focused on a solution. I offered them some water and a comfortable place to sit, and I gave them a clear timeline of when the manager would be available. I also checked in with them every few minutes so they didn't feel forgotten. Eventually, the manager arrived and apologized. The client ended up thanking me for my patience and for handling the situation so professionally. It turned a negative start into a positive interaction.
That's a great example of turning a bad situation around. Now, on the flip side, sometimes the challenges come from inside the office. Imagine you have two senior managers who have differing opinions about how office resources, like a specific meeting room, should be allocated. They both want the room at the same time. How do you mediate that disagreement?
That's a delicate situation because of the power dynamic. My first step would be to listen carefully to both managers to understand their priorities. Is one meeting a quick internal huddle while the other is a high-stakes client presentation? I would gather relevant data such as the usage patterns of other rooms or the urgency of the meetings to assess the situation objectively. Then I would facilitate a discussion between them. Instead of taking a side, I would focus on shared goals and compromises. I might say, since the client meeting is a priority for the firm's growth, perhaps we could move the internal huddle to the smaller lounge for just this afternoon. If they still can't agree, I would propose a temporary solution or a compromise, like splitting the time. I would only escalate the conflict to higher leadership if it persisted and was affecting office productivity, but I always try to resolve it at my level first through diplomatic communication.
Diplomacy is key in that role. Speaking of delicate situations, you are in a position where you see and hear a lot. If you overhear private or confidential conversations while you're at the desk, how do you ensure you don't violate privacy while still remaining attentive to the lobby?
I treat confidentiality as a top priority. If I overhear a private conversation, I immediately focus my attention back on my own tasks. I make sure not to show any reaction, no nodding, no surprised looks that would indicate I heard something I shouldn't have. I respect that privacy by never acknowledging or repeating what was said to anyone else, regardless of how casual the conversation might seem. The only exception would be if the conversation involved a direct safety threat or a legal requirement that forced me to report it. Otherwise, my goal is to be a professional, discreet presence. I want the staff to feel that the front desk is a safe and professional environment.
What about requests for information? Let's say a colleague comes to you and asks for scheduling details about another employee, but those details involve that employee's personal medical appointments. How do you handle that request while staying professional?
I would handle that by being firm but polite. I would explain that I cannot share personal or medical information about other employees because it is protected by our privacy policies and for the sake of confidentiality. I wouldn't make it sound like I'm hiding something, but rather that I'm following a standard professional boundary. I might say, I'm sorry, but I'm not authorized to share personal scheduling details for other staff members. However, if you're trying to coordinate a meeting, I can check their general availability or I can direct you to the appropriate manager who can help you further. This way, I protect the employee's privacy while still being helpful to the colleague.
Good. Now let's talk about your own time management. The front desk can be a place where people just stop by to chat. How would you handle a coworker who is constantly monopolizing your attention and time when you have a mountain of work to do?
I value my relationships with my coworkers, but I also have to get my work done. I would handle this by setting clear boundaries in a respectful way. First, I would quickly assess if their request is actually urgent. If it's just social or a non-urgent question, I would politely let them know that I'm currently in the middle of a focused task. I might say, I'd love to catch up on this, but I have to finish these reports by noon. Can we chat during the break, or can I come find you at 2 p.m.? It's all about communicating my priorities openly. If the behavior continues and it's affecting my performance, I would have a private, friendly conversation with them. I'd suggest we find a more efficient way to work together, maybe by setting designated times for check-ins so I can stay focused on my primary duties while still being supportive.
That sounds like a mature approach. Let's go back to some of the administrative tasks. You'll be handling mail and packages. How do you organize and manage incoming mail and packages efficiently so that nothing gets lost?
I believe a clear system is the only way to prevent errors. I would start by designating specific areas or bins for different types of mail. I'd have one for standard letters, one for large parcels, and a high-priority bin for urgent documents. I find that using labels or even color coding helps make identification very fast. For tracking, I would use a simple spreadsheet or a digital log. I'd record the date received, the sender, and the intended recipient. Once logged, I would prioritize the items based on urgency and distribute them promptly to the correct departments. I also make it a habit to regularly review the tracking system at the end of the day to ensure nothing was overlooked or left sitting in the bin.
That's a very systematic approach. I want to ask about your ability to be proactive. Can you give me an example of a time you successfully anticipated a need or a problem before it became obvious to others?
In my last role, I noticed a pattern with our monthly vendor deliveries. Every third Thursday of the month, we had 3 different large shipments arriving at almost the same time, which would completely clog the lobby and create a chaotic environment for our clients. The management hadn't noticed it because they weren't the ones managing the door. I decided to track the delivery times for a couple of months to confirm the pattern. Then, I approached my manager with the data and suggested that we contact 2 of the vendors to see if they could shift their delivery window by just a few hours. My manager agreed, and we were able to stagger the deliveries. It prevented the lobby from becoming overcrowded and made the whole process much smoother for everyone. It taught me that paying attention to small patterns can prevent bigger disruptions.
That's exactly the kind of initiative we are looking for. Now let's talk about the stress of the job. Front desk work can be a whirlwind. How do you maintain a professional demeanor even when you are under a lot of pressure?
For me, it's about managing my internal state so it doesn't leak into my external interactions. When things get hectic, I focus on staying calm and composed. I find that taking a few deep breaths and organizing my thoughts for 10 seconds helps me refocus. I prioritize my tasks by urgency rather than just reacting to whoever is loudest. I also make a conscious effort to keep a positive attitude and communicate clearly. I've learned that if I remain steady, it often has a calming effect on the people around me. I try to listen actively and respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively to the stress of the moment.
I've noticed that some people in this role just follow the manual while others look for ways to make things better. If you noticed an inefficient office process, how would you go about suggesting an improvement to management?
I think the best way to suggest a change is to come prepared with evidence. I wouldn't just say this process is annoying. Instead, I would gather clear evidence of the problem, such as how much time is being wasted where errors are happening or how many extra steps are involved. Then, I would develop a practical solution that saves time or resources without disrupting the current workflow. I would present this to management in a brief, structured way, focusing on the benefits to the company like increased productivity or cost savings. I always make sure to offer my help in implementing the change. I want them to see that I'm not just complaining about a problem, but that I'm committed to the solution.
That's the right way to handle it. Last technical question for you. We use a key logging system for our secure areas. Are you familiar with that, and what do you believe is the purpose of key logging in an office environment?
Yes, I am familiar with the concept. The purpose of key logging is to maintain a strict record of who has access to specific areas of the building. By tracking which keys are checked in and out, the company ensures accountability. If something goes missing or there is a security breach, the log tells you exactly who had access to that area and when. It prevents the loss or misuse of keys and ensures that security protocols are being followed. It's a critical part of maintaining a safe and secure workplace.
You've answered everything very thoroughly. Before we wrap up, do you have any questions for me about the role or the company?
Yes, I do. I'm curious about the team dynamics here. Since the front desk is the hub of the office, how does the administrative staff typically collaborate with the other departments to ensure things run smoothly? Also, are there any specific challenges the person in this role has faced in the past that you are hoping the new hire will help resolve?
Those are excellent questions. To answer the first one, we view the front desk as the heartbeat of the office. You'll be collaborating with everyone from it to the senior executives. We have a weekly touch-base meeting where the admin team syncs with department heads to discuss upcoming events or visitors. As for the challenges, the previous person was great at the tasks but struggled with the proactive part, the kind of thing you mentioned earlier about anticipating needs. We are really looking for someone who can not only manage the desk but also look for ways to improve the overall visitor experience.
That sounds like a perfect fit for my approach. I really enjoy the challenge of making a process more efficient while keeping the human element at the forefront.
Well, I've enjoyed talking with you. You have a very professional approach and your experience seems to align well with what we need. We are interviewing a few more candidates this week, and we should be able to get back to you by next Tuesday.
That sounds great. Thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to hearing from you.
You're welcome. Have a great afternoon.